Um, okay. Again, a good afternoon to all of you folks. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Quasi Smith. I'm the managing partner for Farage Smith and Green Attorneys at Law, and we're here. Our law firm has the privilege, but yet great responsibility of representing these fine folks behind us, who are the family members, the victims themselves of the events that have transpired here at the Bradley Academy over the last 7 days or so. Um, and I just want to take a moment to discuss and provide some opportunity to provide some additional facts and details. I know there's a great deal of attention that is being given as it relates to the students, and rightfully so. Everything that our school officials do is related to the students, and making sure that our children are taken care of, regardless of whether it's public school, private school, charter school. But it's these fine folks who are behind us and their families that put in the sacrifice every day to make sure that our children are taken care of. And I want to make sure that us as a law firm, while the attention is being given to the students, that we understand that these folks behind us are victims as well. They are husbands, their wives, their parents, their teachers, their custodial workers. They are instructional aides and administrative officials that were also impacted by Daniel Hughes and his wife, Brittany Hughes, their selfish, cowardly, incredulous actions that happened this time last week. Some folks got up today and went back to work. These folks stayed at home looking at computers, shopping, sending out resumes for something that was completely beyond their control, that was avoidable if the proper restraints and mechanisms had been put in place, and if folks that own the school and are responsible for the well-being and care and keeping of contract with these folks would have been kept. Behind me, there are people that have been impacted in ways that are unimaginable. I've sat and I've talked with all of them in session, and some of the stories that I have heard and that our law partners have heard have been literally heartbreaking. There are folks behind me and those that weren't able to make it today who've gotten eviction notices on their door because the rent was due on the 1st. They haven't been able to pay. They've been wrestling and negotiating with car loan companies, trying to figure out how they're going to get caught up on their car notes so that their vehicles don't get repossessed. There are folks whose visas are now impacted and they could be deported because of these cowardly, selfish, self-aggrandizing acts by Brittany Hughes and by Daniel Hughes, and the folks that did not maintain the proper restraints as it relates to this school. There's even more remarkable, there's one of our clients who has a wedding coming up here in the near future, who's having to recant and rethink everything as it relates to marrying the woman of his dreams, all because somebody decided to be selfish. They're not only selfish, very cowardly, and I say that with everything in me, to run off and not face the music and do what's necessary. And this is heartbreaking, and this is what we're dealing with on the back end. There are certain things, and I think it's important that as we have shuffled through the facts, that people really get a load of what has happened here. And these are facts. These are not opinions. These are facts about what has occurred here. Mr. Hughes came into owning the school through a janitorial company that was years ago to service the school. Through some underlying actions and whatnot, he came into ownership of the school. But these are facts that there were things that were purchased on personal credit cards that school funds were used to pay off. The janitorial staff for the school used to clean his personal residence. The cooks from the school used to cater and sponsor parties at his house, his daughter's first birthday party. These aren't allegations. These are facts of things that are certainly beyond the pale, questionable at best. Over the last several weeks, what has happened here, this stuff has not been haphazard. This was a well thought out, well planned exit strategy that did not include any consideration for these folks behind me or the students that attended this school. None of it. For weeks before this departure last week, staff were told to pack up boxes, assemble files, get things together, not knowing that they were packing boxes that would end to their own demise, files that were shipped away and things, and all of a sudden, when trouble breaks out, Mr. Hughes is nowhere to be found, does not face the music, off to another state, and leave these folks behind me and their families, livelihoods in question, families in shambles, tears in their eyes. And our law firm is here to make sure that the public is aware. This is government funding, public funding. Something must be done. There's some questions that must be answered. Funds that were used, school funds, to remodel his home downtown that he lived in, to repair the roof. These are not allegations. These are facts, folks. These things happen. And if the folks that are in charge would look into these facts, they're easily discoverable. And we want some accountability. We want the folks that are in charge, who our tax dollars and these folks' tax dollars pay, to go look into what has happened to these folks and in their lives. Many of them behind me have been denied unemployment. How do you ditch a school and close it and then in the same breath turn around and deny these instructional aides, custodial workers, teachers, basic unemployment on a day that was slated to be a regular day? Turned into a disaster for them, and many of them are struggling to find employment and to get things done now, having to buy their own school material, not adequate books and stuff. The list goes on and on and on of things that have transpired as it relates to this. And so what we're looking for is we're looking for some accountability from the state agencies that are possible. We are in the process of formulating the necessary civil suits against Mr. Hughes and his spouse and those parties that are involved. If there is some mishandling or failure on behalf of the appropriate government entities to look after this, whoever the watchdogs are, we're going to come after them too until these folks behind me are taken care of. I have one interest, and that is the interest of these folks behind me, to make sure that they are taken care of. They're not put out of their homes, and their lives are not upset any further. And also, inside of this school, while the doors are locked, it's been rumored this morning that there's an attempt to sell the school underway. Even as we speak, folks have been inside staging and realtors and whatnot, and we're still trying to confirm more so those allegations that have been made at this point. But these folks behind me have their personal effects and property locked into this school and haven't been given an adequate right to go in and get their own property out of the school. This stuff is beyond the pale, and it must be dealt with expeditiously. Their contracts need to be addressed. Many of them whose contracts have been breached by the school. And so we want these folks to have access. Their school records are there. If the school is closed, where are their personal information, their social security numbers, all of those documents and information that's necessary to employment. We need to know where this stuff is and know that it's in safekeeping. You don't just get to start a fire and then run away and not be held accountable to it. And so we're here to keep the public informed, to answer a few questions that you folks may have, and to let you all know that civilly we will be pursuing the rights and the claims of all of these folks behind us and the many others that are yet to come forth with how they've been impacted by this. And we will make sure that Mr. Hughes and Mrs. Hughes and those that are involved are held accountable for what has happened here at this school, not only to those students, but to these folks behind us.
Quasi, what answers, if any, have you gotten from the Arizona School Charter School Board?
Zero.
What answers do we have as far as financially what happened to this school?
There was a report from, I believe, don't quote me on the date, but I think it was July or June of last year, 2017, where there were questions. They put out a report that's saying that the school's financial status at that time was unacceptable. But a report does not cure issues that show clear difference between this man's salary going from $100,000 a year, showing over millions of dollars that have been doled out to this man. All of these subsidiary companies, Georgia Day Cafe, the janitorial service. These folks could tell the story better than I can. All of this money that was school funds that were funded to his for-profit and non-profit ventures to fatten his pockets at the expense of these folks behind us. These are questions that need to be answered. And when a report is put out that the financial solvability of the school is not in keeping or not in keeping with the law, the standards that they're supposed to be, a report's not going to fix anything. And it's a day late and a dollar short for auditors to come up when the school is closed on a pre-planned exit. These folks were left seeing pictures of a U-Haul with the vehicle strapped to the back, and he's in the wind, won't respond to phone calls. We've reached out to folks who are supposed to be responsible that he's still in contact with, and we have gotten nothing.
What about the timing of this leads you to believe that this is
Well, I mean, well, it's one of those things that the facts speak for themselves. It's very hard. I don't know how big Mr. Hughes' house is personally, but it's hard to close a school one day and be gone the next, and your whole house and everything that you want out of the school packed up. And there's video evidence and pictures out there that we will release at the appropriate time of folks coming into the school at night, packing up boxes, loading up U-Hauls. These staff members were sent an email the weekend before alleging some threatening letter or whatnot was sent to Mr. Hughes, so they closed the school for that Friday and that Monday, and they were supposed to return to school that following Tuesday. Tuesday never came. This was well thought out and planned, and it just so happened that Tuesday your whole house is packed and you're on your way to Oregon or wherever you are. This is well thought out and planned. This is an academic, educational, charter school Ponzi scheme that made somebody rich, and there's some questions that need to be answered here.
Well, basically, what you're alleging is basically embezzlement. Do you know if any legal authorities are looking into this?
Well, again, like I would hope that somebody in the Department of Education, or that's responsible for the Arizona Charter School Board, has heart enough to not treat this as a run-of-the-mill, oh, that's that charter school, we're going to worry about public schools. If we let this one get away, the probability of somebody else getting away with this is great. And I would hope that those folks that are in charge, the governor, it's been rumored that he's aware, or someone on his staff is aware, I would hope that somebody would have the time, the interest to look into this. We're pounding the table about the students, and we should. What about these folks that are behind me? What about these folks?
What type of evidence do you have that he financially used school funds to enrich his own life?
I think it's more. What's more important than the evidence that we have is what evidence that is readily available to the people who are responsible for looking into that evidence to make sure that situations like this had not occurred and does not occur. The evidence is there. You'll find it if you look for it. And it's the government agency's responsibility. There wasn't much work I had to do to get there. Where are the government agencies that are supposed to be talking to these folks behind us instead of trying to score political points and pat themselves on the back in this election year, instead of coming down here to resolve a problem, not to get reelected, to resolve a problem that has impacted our fellow citizens and the folks that are responsible for caring for our children. So we want them to come look at it. The evidence is there. You don't have to look far. Go look for it.
Or have you been able to find out about the enrollment numbers as recorded with the state as opposed to the actual enrollment numbers of the students?
Apparently a number, and again, we're still acquiring data as thing goes on. Apparently the number of students that were reported to the appropriate state agency were a lot less than, substantially less than what was actually attending school here. I've spoken with many of our clients in the interview process, and if the number of 500 or 600 students were reported to the agency, none of the folks that I have interviewed have confirmed that at the time that the school's closed.
What was enrollment to your knowledge?
A little over 100 from what we've gathered so far.
And state reports show 530 was what was enrolled. That's what state report shows.
I haven't.
Well, I know I have the paperwork.
Yeah.
It says 530. Reported for the first 100 days of this school year. Have any of your clients ever seen 530 students on this campus ever?
I wouldn't.
That's what we want to do, because that's a huge part.
Yeah.
That's $1 million difference from 120 students to 530 students. That's millions of dollars in difference in state funds that this person took hold of, and we don't know where it is.
I have not been told by any of my clients. I wouldn't use the term ever, but I have not been told that by any of my clients that there were 500 students at this school the day that school closed. I've not been told that by any of my clients, that there were that number of students there, by any of them. The number was around, again, what I just relayed, around that little over 100 mark. That's what I've been told.
Another question with regards to him using that money to clean his house, the resources. If we are going to talk about that and that those accusations are out there, is there anything that you can tell us on how, if there's any proof out there of this happening, what can you tell us? What kind of proof can we get?
But one of the, of course, in the art of law, you have physical evidence, you have testimonial evidence. It would be as simple as somebody getting on the phone and say, Mr. Smith, we would like to talk to your clients. We will cooperate with any investor. We're not throwing the ball and hiding our hand. These are folks that have firsthand knowledge of what has transpired at this school. That is irrefutable. And again, the records will reflect that. An audit of the financials and the spending will reflect all of this information.
What do you guys think about the fact that when a school like this does close down, those assets are still owned by the same person who you guys are accusing of fraud?
Well, that's why he's going to be paid. He's going to pay these folks. That's what he's going to do. If you can sell your house and split town, then you're going to do whatever is necessary, and you're going to make sure these folks are taken care of, or we're going to hunt you down to the ends of the earth and make sure that these folks are taken care of. I have no interest in protecting anything that Mr. Hughes owns. I care about these folks that are standing behind me, who have cried, who have reached out, who have been up at night for the last 7 days, worried about how they're going to take care of their families. If you got assets, come here and be. Mr. Hughes had this thing, and this is well settled amongst the folks behind us. He referred to his operation as like the Starship Enterprise, and he was known for saying, you see, this is no lie, that he doesn't lose. He wins. He always wins. If he's not held accountable in this instance by folks who can hold him accountable, he will be right. He will win, and these folks behind me and those students will lose.
Do you believe this was always about money for Daniel Hughes?
I don't want to speculate about that. I know that he has benefited greatly from the operation. He came here as a janitor. He leaves with millions. You can make that assumption. These are the facts. There's no cute way to say it. It's hurtful. It's strong. It's supposed to be that way. These are our teachers who we almost deal with annually about propositions to pay them more and this and that. They're already overworked and underpaid. This should not be happening.
Two more questions from me. What will your suit demand? And I'll get to the second question.
Yeah, we'll release that information, and of course, we have no problem with that. We are still in the process of formulating the suit because facts are still unrolling. This is still fresh. We're still within that 7-day time period. It will involve, of course, a breach of contract. We're looking into the government agency that we're supposed to be responsible for this, and hopefully they're not complicit in the matter. But we're looking into that, and but it will be at its minimum demanding that these folks are taken care of and any damages that have happened to them as a result of Mr. and Mrs. Hughes' actions.
Last question from me. What are the actual law-making changes you would like to see so that this doesn't happen again?
And it's a part of what we'll be doing is we will be lobbying these legislators and lawmakers they need to assign some type of SAR, some type of board specifically outside of the regular charter school board to look after incidents like this, that there is continual audit. There are millions of dollars being poured out to charter schools such as this one, and they give this money away with no follow-up. You don't know what's going on, and these folks are living lives of luxury off of our tax dollars, off of grant funding, and when they decide to wash their hands and walk away, this is what you're left with. Unemployed people who in any other instance would have been at work today, but instead we're out here having to discuss matters that should not have happened. And so we want the law looked at and changed, and more accountability and supervision of these funds in the future.
Who do you guys plan to name as defendants? And any agencies, the charter board?
We're still formulating that. At minimum, Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, and then we'll go from there. But we know they've directly benefited from this.
Can anything make this better?
Say it one more time.
Can anything make this better, make it right?
And you can just answer that to us. Is anything going to make this right?
Take care of these folks behind me. Take care of these folks behind me and change the law so that we're not out here again dealing with some mishaps that is happening with our schools, with our teachers, and with our children. Fix it. That's what makes it better. Thank you, fine folks. Thank you guys for being here, and you guys are in our thoughts.
So, Dude sold his house, picked up and left?
Yeah, you the Linwood address. You have the address,
Yeah,
the Linwood
5,
address.
1
He's got,
something,
but I mean, and there are other stuff, you know, because I don't want to get into too deep. I mean, this man.
But he's
has-
gone? They're gone?
He's gone. He's in Oregon. Well, he's in Oregon. From the last we heard, he's in Oregon.
Yeah.
And but he's gone. This man was using school funds to remodel the roof of his house, get the whole house. But the teachers, the Georgia Day Cafe, they were used to provide school lunches. But on the back end, this man was feeding the kids lunches that he got from St. Vincent de Paul, but paying the cook to go cook and cater his kids' birthday parties. And I mean, the list goes. Some of the stuff I've heard,
Mike?
And these are all,
man needs
these
to
are
be
all
in jail.
from witnesses.
Oh yes.